come on inside today and help me wrap up the Seahorse quilt along quilt. Come on inside. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jennifer Long from Sew a Story, early years educator turned Riley Blake fabric designer, and it is week six of the Seahorse quilt along. How have you been doing? Let me know. I'm so curious. I've been seeing so many things pop up around here. This has been such a fun and enjoyable sew along. I hope you learned some new skills. We're going to talk about a few things that you can go back and practice, a few variations that you can do, and then I just want to kind of do a show and share. So let's get started. All right, so if you are just finding this video for the first time, it's never too late to join the Seahorse Quilt Along. Even though the weekly videos are ending, you can still go back and watch all the videos. If you sign up on the website, we'll put the link in the description. If you sign up on the website, you'll still get the email for all of the week vlogs that we've done. You'll get the videos as well. And all you need to do is grab your patterns. So there's a couple of shops that still have a few kits, so if you want to join in with the Created with Love fabric, of this cute little like boho rainbow fabric, then you can grab your kit and get started, share on social media. So today we are doing week 6, and it's quilting, binding, and finishing touches. So a little bit of finishing touches. So quilting. Let's start by going back a little bit. Did you do prairie points along the edge? Now, if you did prairie points, it's going to take a little bit just of care when you're quilting. So if you're quilting on your domestic machine, you'll just kind of flip them over, pin them over, and sew around them. If you're sending them to a long armor, just make sure that they are aware that they're there, and they'll need to do sort of the same thing. If they're doing a pantograph, they'll have to work around those. If you're doing custom quilting, then they can obviously work around those. If you don't mind if they're pinned down, then I guess you can quilt right over them as well too. Or you can add little tack down stitches or maybe little hand stitches on them as well. If you just opted not to do that prairie point border at all, then you can just go ahead and quilt it edge to edge. I don't know if you can see really closely on this quilt, but I've used a pantograph. I don't know if you can really see if I can turn it over. Can you see it? I'll have to give you a couple of zoom in. I'll show you on the blog for sure that I used a really dense bubble pattern, just an edge-to-edge bubble pattern. Now, I have a long arm machine, so I love to do that as well. But I really have dense quilting, so it's depending on your use of how you're going to be using your quilt and maybe how dense you want to quilt it and the batting that you're using. I'm using an 80-20 batting just because I feel like I have a lot of quilts that I display a lot at shows, and I want them to be able to be folded for a while and then unfolded and not have, creases that you can't get out of. Lots of time we could go into a whole discussion on batting, and I'm sure there's lots of opinions, but lots of times when you're using a cotton batting or anything with complete natural fibers, when you have it folded for a long time in the same way, then you can really, it's hard to get those creases out. So I like to use an 80-20. I also sometimes change how I fold them. So if I fold them just as a square, then sometimes I fold them on a diagonal and change it there just so they're not always held in the same spot like that. I also fold my quilts and put them in actually pretty narrow bins, so there's not a whole weight of like lots of quilts laying on them. So if you have a lot of quilts that you store, that's one thing. I'd love to hear how you store quilts and what you do if they have creases in them as well. So I just want to talk about density. So I've quilted this really dense because I've taken it to Quilt Market, and so when it's displayed, I like to have it really, really dense. So it's number one, kind of like holding the shape. I also have really thin batting in it so you can see the piecing because, we're showing our patterns. So I usually quilt it really dense and have extremely thin batting for the purposes that I am using this quilt for. But, it depends if you're going to be putting it on as a beach quilt, or if you're going to have it for a child on their bed. Maybe you want it a little bit more lofty. Maybe you want the quilts to be a little bit more heavy or thick, so you want 2 layers of batting and then not quite such dense quilting. So these are all completely up to you and your personal opinion, and I would love, 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 love to hear more about it and know about it. So you can either comment here, but I would like to invite you for like a show and share is to come to the Sew a Story Facebook group. So even if you're not on Facebook very often, just come in and join our Facebook group, because we're so many wonderful makers in there that are sharing great ideas. We'd love to see how you are quilting your quilt. Maybe we can learn from each other, different ideas. Maybe you're a long arm quilter and you want to share a little bit of information on that. So lots of fun things that we can do together inside there. So it's just a Facebook group, Sew a Story. That's how you'll find us. Binding. All right, so I've heard about a couple different binding. There's lots of different ways, obviously, to do a binding. I just did, this is a machine. Actually, this is hand bound, this one, but I do love machine bound. We'll talk about both of those in a second. You can do a phalange binding. You can do bias binding as well. So I did not do bias binding here, but bias binding basically means that you cut your fabric on the bias so that when you're attaching it there, it does have a little bit of like give, and then it really like flips over. I like to fold my binding in half, and then actually in half again, and I sew this raw edge to my quilt. Now it depends. If I'm hand binding it, then I'm going to actually sew it to the top and flip it around to the back, and I hand sew it along the back. But if I'm going to machine bind it, I actually sew that raw edge on the inside on the back of the quilt, and then I flip the folded side around to the top, and then I just run my machine along, like 1/16 of an inch along the binding there. I use a 2.5-inch binding normally, except if I use really, really, really thin batting, then I like to use like a 2.25 binding. But the pattern and fabric requirements are always for 2.5. Finishing touches. Okay, we're just like flying through this day today, aren't we? Finishing touches. Well, now I'm sure you can guess what I'm going to say is a great finishing touch for this quilt. It's underwater and it's bubbly. So you know what I'm going to suggest, that you can bring the children in or not to do it for yourself to do. But of course, I'm going to highlight sparkle paste. Now, sparkle paste is a product that I did invent with ThermoWeb. We worked together to produce this for fabric, and it's actually heat set. So it's so fun. So you would just find a color, like maybe I would use the snow, like the very iridescent color on the bubbles, and it would give them, depending on how thick you want to like put it on or not, it could give them a lot of like depth and texture to make it permanent, because it is a quilt that hopefully will get used and displayed. To make it more permanent, what you need to do is just apply your sparkle paste on, put a pressing paper on, let it dry for 30 minutes, put a pressing paper, on top, and heat set it. I just heat set it with my Elisa iron for a few seconds on each spot, and just lift and move it, and then it's washable. Oh no, it sparkles coming off. So that's really, really fun. You can also have some fun and do maybe some hand embroidery with a few matching colors. We know, like as crafters for early years education, that like texture is something that, well, we all love, really. Like we love the texture of a quilted quilt, but having some elements like just maybe a running stitch around the bubbles, maybe on the end of the scales, you do a little bit of detail there. Maybe you do some French knots on there. This can happen after you quilt it, but my suggestion to do that would be so you don't get in the way of your quilting or have it get caught on your embroidery for both of these embellishments. But I would have your tail of your embroidery come through the middle. So I'd put it through the front and have the tail kind of like sitting in the middle, so it's just nice and long inside of there. And then I would just start doing whatever stitch that you want. Maybe you could start with a little tiny, tiny, tiny couple tiny stitches or a knot so it doesn't come out. And that would be really, really fun. And then same thing when you end it, just end it all the way through with a long tail inside the batting, and it's hidden completely there and nice and safe. A few other suggestions you could do, of course, you could add things like buttons and trims and all of those things. But one thing to just be aware of is just like choking hazards and age appropriateness always of the quilt and who the recipient is. So, don't leave yet because I want to talk to you a little bit about what's coming, but I just wanted to wrap that up and say this is the Seahorse quilt. So, congratulations. You can pat yourself on the back. Please share, share, share. We've got a lot of fun things happening in August here that's coming. If you haven't heard yet, I just have to share it with you here that we are launching something that's been in my heart for so, so long. It's called a crafting experience. So this experience is just all you need. It's just 10 minutes, not 10 minutes a day, just 10 minutes at a time with you and your child to form long lasting bonds through creativity. So I'm sharing a free workshop experience called 10-Minute Magic, Crafting Connections with the Ones That Love and Matter Most. And you can come to this whole week. There I'm going to share with you exactly what we'll be doing. So I'm going to share with you an adorable paper roll, like a paper roll. That's right. You just grab a couple of them, 4 if you want, and a printable. And we're going to talk about ways to do this, what to do with your kids, and then something called purposeful play and what will happen, what you can do so that that project, that 10 minutes can actually extend into like a long lasting time with your child, that they can play and still feel like loved and cared for in all of the ways. So really, really exciting. That is called 10 Minutes Magic for Crafting Connections, and that's going to be the last week of August. So you can sign up now. We'll make sure we put a link here as well, and that will lead into doors opening for this experience. That's called Crafting Connections. It's going to be 6 weeks of 10 minutes of magic in all kinds of different avenues, using different supplies that you have at home and learning exactly how you can spend time with your child to get the most out of it, with different ages in your family, with different personalities, with different abilities, and get the most out of it fine motor wise with their hands, but then also emotionally, so that the time you invest, that 10 minutes will change the whole trajectory of your day. So really, really, really exciting. I'm so passionate about it. If you haven't signed up for the waitlist, it's totally free. You can sign up for this 10-minute magic, and it's happening at the end of August. So I should see you there. And I will see you very, very soon. If you're looking for more sew-alongs with us, just make sure you're on the Sew Story newsletter. We have more coming in the fall. So there'll be more sew-alongs coming of all kinds. So lots and lots of fun at Sew a Story. And until next time, I cannot wait to see what you create. Thank you so much for being here. Bye for now.